Good morning from Los Angeles, and thank you for joining the last of our monthly media updates for calendar year 2020. Today, I will share our November cargo volume data, provide a forecast of what's ahead, and an operational overview. And of course, I'll be glad to take your questions. So let's get started. For the month of November, the Port of Los Angeles processed more than 889,000 20-foot equivalent units. That represents a year-on-year increase of 22% compared to last November. You may recall that last month I estimated we would approach about 900,000 TEUs for the month of November. With our Port Optimizer data and great analytics staff, we continue to refine this forecasting tool. It's worth noting that there were 12 ships at anchor on November 30th awaiting berthing rights here in Los Angeles, with an estimated 100,000 TEUs on board. Those vessels were delayed by about 2 days and thus shifted into our December data. I'll talk more about anchorage and operational challenges shortly. In November, 88 container vessels berthed. We had 9 additional or extra loaders to meet high demand in Asia and no canceled sailings for the month. After 11 months of year-on-year cargo declines, we've now stitched together 4 consecutive months, August through November, of year-on-year growth. During this period, the monthly TEU average is almost 930,000 units, an indicator of the powerful import surge and its duration. November continued a pattern of heavy warehouse and distribution center inventory replenishment, in addition to last-minute holiday orders coming across our docks. It is unusual to see this kind of import volume so late in the year. As we all know, 2020 has been anything but normal. On the import side of our business, more than 464,000 TEUs crossed the docks, a 25% increase over last November. Remarkably, the import push has erased the deficit from the first half of 2020. Imports are now up about 1% compared to last year's eastbound trade. Exports came in at more than 130,000 TEUs, a disappointing 5.5% decrease compared to last November. Year to date, exports are down 13% and have dropped a woeful 23 out of the last 25 months. Mainly on the heels of the continued and ongoing trade tensions with China and the strength of the U.S. dollar, making our goods expensive to sell in overseas markets. Empty containers exceeded 294,000 TEUs for the month. That's a 34% increase compared to last year. Empties are still in high demand in Asia, and once again, empty containers outstripped by 2 times the amount of loaded American exports that departed from the Port of Los Angeles. Year to date, the Port of Los Angeles overall volume through November stands at about 8.3 million TEUs. That's about 3% behind 2019. It's a number that many would not have believed was possible to reach when we were down nearly 20% after the first 5 months of this year. To add perspective on how busy we've been in recent months, the Port of Los Angeles has had at least 10 container ships at berth every day since September 28th. For the San Pedro Bay, both ports had a strong November, with volume up 26% bay-wide compared to November of 2019. Year to date, the San Pedro Bay volume is now about even compared to last year. On the labor front, after a slight dip during Thanksgiving week, work on the docks continues to be very strong. Week 50, which ended on December 4th, showed for both Los Angeles and Long Beach ports more than 50,000 longshore labor shifts. Year to date, though, we're still down about 5% compared to last year, and that equates to about 111,000 less labor shifts so far in 2020. Those will not be made up. And compared to the all-important 3-year average shown by the blue line on your screen, we're still down 8% compared to that run rate. The 5.5-month cargo surge, though, has been welcome news on the employment front. As always, more cargo means more jobs here at America's Port. Looking ahead, the signal data indicates that December volume is also strong. The last 3 weeks of December show an average import increase of about 60% year on year each week. Our current estimate for the month of December is about 875,000 TEUs, which would be almost 17% more than last year's December mark. Again, much depends on the fluidity and the ability to get ships at berth. We're factoring those operational challenges into our estimates. Our current 2020 year-end projection is 9.2 million TEUs, which would be just a little more than 1.5% lower than last year. Considering the roller coaster we've been on all year long, I'm pleased with how we're finishing this challenging year of 2020. Our first look at January volume indicates approximately 850,000 TEUs, which would be about 5% more than a very busy January 2020. That number could change depending on the anchorage and fluidity issues I've mentioned. Retailers broadly are estimating imports will be strong at least through April. A recent UCLA Anderson economic forecast predicts, and I quote, "a gloomy COVID winter and an exuberant vaccine spring. This to be followed by sustained economic growth." Generally, we agree that import volume looks solid in the months ahead. We'll see a little bit of a volume dip following Lunar New Year, which falls in mid-February, at a time when manufacturing traditionally slows in China. That means our throughput here at the Port of Los Angeles should be strong through at least the first week of March. We continue to closely monitor public health and economic data points that impact trade. Turning to operations, with the help of Los Angeles Port Police Chief Tom Gazy and our expert drone flyers, here's an overview of what's happening now at the Port of Los Angeles. This time we're showing you what we looked like back in April at the top of the screen, compared to footage taken just yesterday depicted on the bottom. As you can see, it continues to be very busy here at America's Port. Terminals remain fully operational as they have been since the emergency orders were announced in early March, with labor shifts working on both the day and night sides. Today, we have 20 vessels at berth, including 15 container ships. Additionally, there are 23 container vessels at anchorage in the San Pedro Bay. Of those, 14 are bound for the Port of Los Angeles. Last month, I discussed operational challenges in the San Pedro Bay and offered some solutions. I'd like to give you an update on several moving parts of this very intricate puzzle. Every part of the logistics supply chain, including ports around the globe, have been stretched and pushed. As the pandemic lingers, United States consumer buying habits have changed dramatically. Manufacturers and the supply chain are still adjusting. Availability of assets has been strained. Truckers, dock workers, warehouse workers alike are all in demand, and everything is tight. Idle times and vessels at anchor remain challenging as the heavy flow of imports continue. Container dwell time on terminals remains at about 5 days, double what it was before the import surge started this summer. Street dwell time, waiting for warehouse or store space, is now at 6.3 days compared to 7.1 just last month, an improvement over October. I'd like to thank the retailers and the trucking community for focusing on this all-important area over the last 30 days. We still need to get back into the neighborhood of 3.5 days of on-street dwell, where it was holding pre-import surge, and I do know that everyone is focused on that today. Anchorage remains a true concern for all of us. Many vessels are stopping first in a holding pattern before coming to berth. It's an indication of the sheer amount of traffic that we're seeing. In November, 50 of the 88 vessels coming to Los Angeles first went to anchor and averaged 2.5 days there. So far in the month of December, about 80% of arriving vessels are going to anchor first. The wait time now has increased to 4 days. Last month, I outlined actions we are taking to meet the evolving operational challenges broadly in the supply chain and right here at home in Los Angeles. The incentive plan for our 7 cargo terminals to reward faster turn times and dual transactions is moving forward. We've proposed to invest more than $8 million over the next 12 months in this first-of-its-kind initiative. The program will be brought to our Harbor Commission in January. Our digitization push continues full steam ahead. Stakeholder interest in our new data tools is very encouraging. I'm pleased that since we introduced the signal and the return signal data tools in the fall, stakeholders registering for the Port Optimizer have increased by 60%. The more users we have, the more it helps increase visibility and fluidity of our cargo. As you know, the signal offers an aggregated 3-week look at imports coming into Los Angeles. The return signal assists the trucking community to return empty containers, thus raising the odds of dual transactions, which are so important to our truck community. I'm pleased to report that a new start-stop yard for the return of bare chassis and empty containers has opened here at the Port of Los Angeles. Operated by the Pool of Pools intermodal equipment providers, this is a good step forward, and I congratulate the pool operators for their efforts. Early indications are that the site, located on Terminal Island, is being used by stakeholders in an effort to ease the space crunch. The Port of LA is also in the midst of pursuing additional land use opportunities. Any unused property at the port is being reviewed to create maneuverability and flexibility in an effort to relieve the pressure on the marine terminals. We have a blueprint also to get more chassis off the marine terminals to neutral sites near dock, which could open up an additional 50 to 80 acres of marine terminal space here in LA. Lastly, allow me to share our efforts on the customer service front. Thanks to reporting by the media, it came to my attention that several toy manufacturers were having logistics issues, from manufacturing all the way down to the store shelves. Some of these challenges were tied to operations right here at the port complex. I responded by personally reaching out to toy executives. As a result, we've helped prioritize cargo. We're also working with the Toy Manufacturers Association and others to identify priority containers to get the gifts under the tree before Christmas. There's a lot on the line right now as the port and its stakeholders face these evolving challenges. With this unprecedented amount of cargo volume moving so close to the holidays, we are essentially in a triage situation. If there is something we can do to prioritize goods, help find or move a box that will assist a customer or consumer, we're going to do it. We need to be able to scale up when a surge hits, whether it be assets or staffing. And then, when we've got to rebalance that scale during more normal times or even slower cargo volume, like we've witnessed in this past spring, we must be able to rise to that challenge. With so many jobs and all the activity on the economic side tied to this port, we need to be smart, nimble, and responsive. We're working across sectors every day to do just that. Philip, at this time, that concludes my operational update, and maybe we could turn it over to the media to field some questions, please.
Sure. The first question is from Eric Watkins, Lloyd's List. As COVID vaccinations begin this week, do you think dock workers should receive priority in getting shots?
Yes, I believe they should, absolutely. In fact, just last week, I co-signed a letter along with ILWU International President Willie Adams, PMA CEO Jim McKenna, and other port directors, sending this to the 3 West Coast governors in Washington State, Oregon, and California, urging that vaccinations for waterfront workers be made available as soon as possible. It's important to prioritize the longshore workers and other waterfront folks who have worked every day through this pandemic, bringing goods through the Port of Los Angeles and out to every one of our 435 congressional districts. There's also work on the international front to help our seagoing mariners, vessel crews around the world, find safe harbor, get necessary medical treatment, and be prioritized for both therapeutics and vaccines coming up in the not-too-distant future. We'll continue to campaign for all workers that keep our ports moving around the world. Eric, very thoughtful as always. Thanks for the question.
Thank you, Gene. Remember, folks, if the media would like to submit questions, just go ahead and type them into the Q&A box. Craig from CanX, I see you asked one, but it kind of cut off, so please repeat that for us. The next question is from David Laidman from S&P Global Platts. He's asking, what will ports do differently as a result of the events of 2020? And also, any insights into the overall 2021 market?
Yeah, thanks, David. A number of things that we take from this year, and one really centers around information flow. At the last press conference, I mentioned an aspiration that if you could imagine the port receiving information on purchase orders from major retailers and importers alike, that would be some 3 months before vessels sailed Asia. The ability to take that data and make sure that we have the right skilled labor, the proper assets at the right location, and a general awareness with time to take corrective action would be an absolute dream for many of us. But there's more work to do in this area, and continuing to earn the confidence of port stakeholders to increasingly share their data with the necessary business rules that protects them, not sharing anything proprietary or controversial, but that gives us a standing position to really improve port operations. And at the same time, for 2021, it's taking on some of these learnings, having an understanding of the American consumer and where these purchase orders may go, that'll really be key. But some of the things that we've already mentioned, such as dual transactions, reducing turn times, pre-positioning assets so we can handle and have the ability to scale, just as we talk about in the logistics business, to meet demand as well as scale back when demand may be a little bit less than we're witnessing right now. As far as looking downline into 2021, there'll be a number of areas that we watch very closely in addition to consumer demand. It's how we respond to the American exporter who has been left out of some of this equation thus far in 2020. What the new administration in Washington will bring on the policy front, and equally as important, renewing those relationships with our longtime allies on the trading front to make sure that we have a broader-based approach to international trade and the competitiveness of both the American worker and company. Thanks, David. Appreciate the question.
Okay, this is from Craig Feigner at KNX. Are more durable goods being purchased by Americans? What is being shipped through the port? And what will you personally most remember about this challenging year?
Thanks again for joining, Craig. We appreciate it. I think I've reported recently that we're seeing more household appliances coming through, more furniture, both indoor and outdoor, a lot of athletic equipment, athleisure apparel, etc., because many of us are working from home and need to find a way to break away and exercise just a little bit. That on top of all the traditional holiday season goods that we're seeing extended this year, as well as the replenishment of our big box retailers, home improvement stores, and others who have remained open during the pandemic. An area that has continued to be hampered by the trade policies has been manufacturing in the U.S. I've noticed just a little bit of a decline in that area of parts, components, and peripherals that go into that American manufacturing process. A great question, and thanks again for joining.
He also asked, what would you remember most about this challenging year?
It has been just unbelievable. Not only the work that we must do collectively at our ports, but what we've done for our fellow man and woman. The mayor of Los Angeles setting up the Disaster Service Worker Program, where we're now approaching, I think it's more than 190 Harbor Department staff that have done work for those who are less fortunate, whether it be in hotels, trying to welcome those guests that have no other place to live, working on the ground in some of the areas that we've tried to help with those experiencing homelessness, the testing sites throughout the county of Los Angeles, and so many other unsung heroes who have really reached out that lending and helping hand. We set up Logistics Victory Los Angeles this year in a small way to try to help our frontline medical workers. And to date, we've distributed more than 3.6 million units of personal protective equipment to 36 Los Angeles hospitals and 150 skilled nursing facilities. While we were never meant to be the answer to all of the supply needs, we are starting to make progress in this area, and there's much more work to do, much more refinement that we have to continue to look at in our processes. But I'm extremely encouraged by the more than 24 volunteers here in the City and Harbor Department of Los Angeles that have made Love LA go so far. So there's a lot to take away, a lot to be thankful for overall, but I'm so proud and heartened of our fellow human beings for the extension of the kindness and acts of goodwill that have been demonstrated throughout the course of this year. Thank you, Craig.
Next question, Bill Mongaluzzo, Journal of Commerce. The Piers November data for U.S. imports from Asia just came in, and for the fifth straight month, the San Pedro Bay Port Complex combined handled about 800,000 TEUs from Asia. That is far greater than in previous months going back to January 19. My question is, has the port complex reached its maximum capacity utilization rate? If so, does that mean the port complex will remain congested until import volumes drop?
Thank you, Bill, for the question. Two pieces here, really. No, we have not reached capacity. We do a regular study of the activity of the port in those various nodes, and I can report to you that shoreside cranes are in operations around 50 to 55% of the time during a traditional 9-shift work week. So obviously you've got more time in the week, Sunday through Saturday, to employ folks and get out on the docks working the cargo. But what we've seen so far is that one of the real causals has been that dwell time, whether it's the bunching of ships that come in, creating high stacks of cargo on the marine terminal with increased dwell times now up to 5 days, or the dwell times on the street, which peaked at 7.1 days in recent memory. If we can bring those down with a concerted effort of all involved, that helps increase velocity. This artificial shortage of chassis and trucks are mainly exacerbated by the amount of time it takes to do a traditional transaction, whether on rail or truck. So I do believe, and scientifically and through simulations, we do have continued upside. The unconstrained forecast, as you know, that was provided by the ports of Long Beach and Los Angeles going out to the year 2040 shows the ability to handle more cargo, but we've got to be scalable in these times of surge, and we've got to be able to repurpose when volume is lower, such as making sure that our skilled workforce is reskilled and upskilled to handle the challenges in the future, that our retailers and importers are sharing data with us so we can be smarter when we go to the ground with plans on mobilizing assets and staffing. There still is much more work to do with digitization, and we need more people to subscribe to this belief as well. Thanks, Bill. Appreciate you joining as always.
Thank you. The next question is from Chris Ancarlo, KFI. Is there a belief that the trade imbalance will equalize in a Biden administration? And if that happens, what does that mean for jobs at the port?
Good question, Chris, and I don't know that we equalize. Earlier in the year, when I saw what was happening in the trade landscape, I called for a national export strategy, which will be at the head of our policy list when we begin to speak with the new administration in earnest. And we've already been speaking to the transition teams across the board. The other piece is that while we've never been balanced on container trade for the better part of a generation, the opportunity to bring some of the people back to work who have been out of jobs because of COVID-19 lies in some of our most important industries. Agriculture, manufacturing broadly, automotive, just as beginners. The ability to get folks back on the job, and as I've reported before, according to the U.S. Department of Labor, pays on average for export jobs 17% more than jobs in other segments. So there continues to be this compounding of opportunities that we need to get moving on. And as I mentioned, with respect to trade policy, we need rules-based trade efforts. That which holds everyone accountable but opens up the opportunity to increase commerce for the American-based company and worker associated. There's much more to do in bringing our allies to the table than trying to take this approach of bilateral trade that doesn't have support of the broader international community. So with this, I think we have opportunities. There should be a focus on exports, and we'll try to build from there. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Gene. We have a few more questions. If anyone currently watching wants to ask, please type them into the Q&A, and remember to type in your media affiliation. The next question is from Matt Leonard, Industry Dive. What's the latest you're hearing from U.S. exporters as it relates to empty containers? Have we seen any improvement there in recent weeks?
Thanks for the question, Matt. I just an unscientific sample of the American exporter that we keep up with every day here at the port is that they're frustrated. They're upset. They're not able to move their product or crop as willingly as they would like to. And it's been well documented. Getting empty containers back to Asia is a priority of many right now to get ready for the next round of imports. But we need an approach that helps us. And as many of us have witnessed, imports of finished goods go to major metropolitan consumption areas where all of us go to the store or buy online. The majority of exports move from rural America in those three major and other segments. We've got to find a way to cut the angle on this and get equipment closer to those folks who need to export. Again, as part of our recovery economically and as part of the viability of these pillars in our industrial setting here in the United States. So folks are disappointed, they're upset, they're frustrated, and we've got to continue to find ways to build solutions on that. Whether it's driving import hubs, shifting cargo mixes, and taking advantage of what may be available, we're putting our heads together at the highest level, including those with subject matter expertise in those three particular segments. There's a lot of work to do here, and we need a couple of opportunities to fall our way very quickly.
Thank you. Next question is from Kim Link Wills at FreightWaves. I wonder about the massive number of containers lost recently on the one container vessel, and I'm wondering how widespread digitization in the maritime industry could have provided almost real-time visibility into the containers lost and even cargo ownership and contents. Gene, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, Kim, thanks for the question and appreciate you joining. You know, the advocate in me says having the ability to track every container, its whereabouts along the path, and even when at rest is very important. The opponents say that once a container is on a ship, that's it. For 10 to 14 days, it's not moving until it gets to its next port of call for the move and movements beyond. A situation like this would give real-time information, allow companies who are importing those containers to make quick decisions. And it's not only the execution management that digitization brings, but it's the exception management. So again, as a call to everyone in this industry who's been working so diligently with us here at the Port of LA, we'd like to continue to raise the bar in sharing information. It must be rules-based. It must have the contract of privacy for those who are not willing to share data outside any realm of importance to their company. And it must also create an environment where good stewards of data rise to the top. So there's much more work to do in this area, but I think we're inching closer just about every day. And this is another prime example of how we must improve as an industry.
Thank you, Gene. Last call for questions. As we take the last question, it's a follow-up from Eric Watkins at Lloyd's List. He's offering some comments from the Port of Oakland that stated that they were seeing strong import demand continuing, and they were saying that congestion at Southern California ports was resulting in delays in Oakland. The cargo is there, it's just delayed, said the port representative. We expect to see higher volumes. Can you comment on Oakland's congestion?
Yeah, that's a real case. Brian and Danny Wan both are friends. We talk regularly. Most of the cargo that comes here on the Trans-Pacific route eastbound, as you know, Eric, is a nonstop event coming straight to Los Angeles. Many of those services then go northbound to Oakland. So if there are slowdowns or delays here in Los Angeles, it does impact Oakland and their customers. Another reason why we've got to double down on efficiencies, even in a once-in-a-generation surge like we're witnessing today, to help out the conveyance of cargo and our American economy overall. Thanks for the question, Eric. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Gene. That concludes the questions. The floor is yours for any closing remarks.
Great. Thanks, Philip. In closing, I would like to invite all of you to our 6th annual State of the Port event, which will be held virtually at noon Pacific time on Thursday, January 14th. On that date, I'll announce our December and full year container volume and other details, provide updates on all of our lines of business, and discuss what's ahead in 2021. The event is free and will be broadcast to a much larger audience of industry and port stakeholders. Please put a note on your calendar to join us at noon Pacific time on Thursday, January 14th. Our media team, led by Philip, will send you registration details here shortly. And with that, I want to thank you for your time and your continued interest in the Port of Los Angeles over the course of this historic and challenging year. Our Port of Los Angeles family wishes you a peaceful holiday season, and may the new year of 2021 bring you good health and prosperity. Thank you, and stay safe, everyone.